Hi, today I'll be talking about healing childhood conditioning, about love, and what true love can really be for us. So I'll start out by using the childhood schemas by Bennett Goldman. Bennett and Goldman, the scientist from 2001. So this is already over 20 years ago, but it still applies. And I'm going to be reading out from an actual chart. So looking at some of these issues. So emotional style, abandonment, panic, sadness. The feelings are fear. The core belief is people always leave me. The parent's role is loss of or erratic caretaking leads to anxious attachment. As a child, fear of being alone. As adult, clinging, pushing others away, jealousy about loved one, dump before you get dumped. The treatment is realize you can be alone and content. So that's our first example of moving from a schema of conditioning in childhood. As we said, the parents' loss of or erratic caretaking leads to anxious attachment. It's just unreliable. It's not true love for that child. Number two is, there's 5 of them, is deprivation, which is emotional. The feelings are usually anger, sadness, guilt. The core belief is my needs won't get met, or nobody cares about my feelings. And the parents didn't take much notice of the child, so as a child, it's a mini adult who feels ignored, and as an adult, it becomes people-pleasing, caring job, outwardly capable, yet self-indulgent, anger when let down, emotionally distant, binging. The treatment is recognizing that your neediness shapes your relationship. You have to assert your wishes and needs. This has to become so important to you that you're not looking for everybody to take care of you without realizing. Then emotional style of subjugation. The feelings are anger and resentment. The core belief is it's always your way. The parents were controlling and gave child no say, and as a child, it's a good child or a teen rebel, but as an adult, gives in quickly, refusal to commit to anything at all, slavish, indecisive, people-pleasing. And the treatment is to get in touch with the anger over being controlled and learning how to assert wishes and needs. So we're starting to see that true love is like not to deny needs or wishes, right? It's to, so far in all of these, it's realizing you can be alone and content. You don't need to be attached to people who you can't depend on. You don't need to have your neediness go quiet. You deserve to speak up about what you need and then not feel like you need so much. And the third one we see here is to assert your wishes. Get in touch with feeling controlled. You're not meant to feel that way. The next one is unlovability. The feelings are shame, humiliation, and sadness. The core belief is I'm not lovable, not good enough. Deep down, I'm flawed. The parents were hypercritical in words or nonverbal information, and the child felt bravado and dejected, And these are almost like we could imagine caricatures, like the mini adult, fear of being alone, the attached by the hip, the good child who became a bad teenager, and then now this like bravado and this dejectedness. And as an adult, this fear, weakness will be exposed. So self-contempt, seeks distant others, reclusive, low self-esteem, and like fame-seeking bravado, wanting to be that false self. But the treatment of this is to challenge the self-doubts, focus on strengths, realize loved ones love you as you are. And you find people you can trust, even a therapist. So the theme here, obviously, is you start to awaken to your true self. Your needs are okay. Your confidence is not dependent on what you do on the outside. It's who you are on the inside. And I'll go to the last one, which is the emotional style is called mistrust. The feelings are suspicious, paranoid, rage, humiliation. The core belief is people cannot be trusted. And I would say I personally suffer the most with these, with unlovability and mistrust. And a little bit of the others, a little bit of the emotional deprivation, a little bit of subjugation, a little bit of abandonment, panic, and sadness, but mostly unlovability and mistrust. And here we have parents, they were sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse. And the child feels a sense of betrayal. It's as an adult, it's hard to get close to others, pick a series of abusive partners who confirm this mistrust and abuse children in the same way. So the treatment for this is simply find people you can trust. You've got to heal it. So the first way to do that, obviously, and why I share these videos, is we got to learn to trust ourselves. We got to learn to trust the true self, which we were raised with conditioning that we shouldn't. So I'm going to move into the next part now, and I'm going to read kind of this touching poem by Adrienne Rich. But before I do that, I'm going to make a comment that in a previous video, I really wanted to come back to this. In a previous video, I spoke about Elazar with Aaron, the high priest. And, I mentioned him as his assistant because he was a priest. But I wanted to also clarify that he was actually his son. He was in the priestly family. He was his son, but he was also an assistant. Like in the role that he took, I was talking about leadership in that video, about how they nullify their self and they become whatever's necessary. So Elazar didn't get to be like having a father, let's go on fishing trips, let's share a sheep together, like let's go pick some pomegranates. It's not like in those days they were able to have that kind of relationship. His father was a high priest for an entire nation. He sacrificed himself, and so did so many others in my lineage. So in terms of Elazar being part of the family, he was a son who also had to kind of give that up. But we don't see here that he was abused, that he was didn't get noticed, that he was controlled, that he didn't have a say, that he was hypercritical. He was receiving hypercritical information or words, that there was erratic caretaking to anxious attachment, that there was abuse. So that's what I'm trying to say here, that we learn how to let go of this strengthened, rigid self that we want to survive with, and we open up to something bigger, but not because, we don't have a self, but because we choose this. So I wanted to say this earlier that in the previous year I mentioned Aaron having Elazar as his son, but I thought this was the perfect time to bring it in, that even though he was his son, and even though he had to sacrifice a lot of his personal needs from his father, who became a leader and served the people, protected the people, brought peace to the people, and he himself had a similar role that he was growing into, and especially after his father died, I still want to say that in this case, it's not leaving necessarily this kind of trauma we're talking about here. So there is a difference between serving something bigger than yourself versus just losing yourself to serve your parents. So now I'm going to talk about this poem, Adrienne Rich. It's 2 parts. I read it in a book by an Irish writer named Nuala O'Fallon, and the book is called Are You Somebody? And she quotes a lot of amazing writers and poets, and this is one where I really felt touched. Anytime you go back, the familiar underpulse will start its throbbing. Home, home. And the hole torn and patched over will gape unseen again. Another portion here is, the child soul musters strength where the holes were torn. But there are no miracles. Even children become exhausted. How shall they comfort each other who have come young to grief? Who will number the grains of loss, and what would comfort be? And I feel this touches on what I'm working on this month. This month, the Hebrew month of Cancer, is called Tammuz. And there's some themes I have for myself. One is purity. I'll show you, I made some art. Purity, in a moment I'll show you. Purity, don't kill the trees. Don't kill the tree. In other words, I'm part of a tree, so don't kill the roots. When my branches might go a little too far, they might touch into something contaminated. It comes back into the tree. Don't kill the tree. See beautiful things. Gaze into faces I love. Move forward for my own sake. Don't contaminate where I came from. Be okay with myself. Let people go, and don't rush any relationships. And finally, forgiveness flowing, no denial. So the reason I bring this up is because for me it's in the theme of healing where I come from, by finding the beauty in it and the love and the goodness. And I will show you, I'm working on some art for pure vision, for ayin tov, which in Hebrew means a good eye. And we have a mezuzah on the door, which is like a protection umbrella, and a kind of like this idea that looking at good will bring you good in your life. If you look at the bad, you're going to bring bad into your life. So there's 4 of them. They could be shown either this way or this way. They don't exactly come in pairs, even though there's 2 and 2. So these 2 are a theme, and you can see that it could kind of be like a set of eyes, but it can also be totally separate. And then these 2 are a theme, and they can become together or totally separate. So to me, these are 4 pieces, and I'm working on this because I like to cultivate writing, meditating, reading, learning, and also art, and like all these things with the themes that I'm working with. I find it really integrates better, lands better, and I process it better. And now I'm going to read some notes I took many years ago on these retreats I used to go to, like Buddhism, at monasteries and yoga ashram. And all of these are about union, true self. True love, basically, is true self. So I'm just going to read, what is true love? Now that we're like moving through like what it wasn't, like in all the ways it affects us and some of the treatments we can have based on research, I'm going to read now about true love. So true love contains charity, which is benevolence, gentleness towards what has failed, broken, disgraced, unappealing, angry, foul, in us or others. It is directing sympathy. It's not admiring strength. That's what messed up, lost. That's what has been messed up or lost or in pieces, and what we may have hate for, resentment, or be frightened by. It's not devoting an interest in perfection, but to devote an act of charity toward the mistakes and aberrations. We will all one day require the charity of others and need people to look past our evident failures while we are on our knees, intent to search for our hidden. We need them to intending to search for our hidden merits. And that true love also contains imagination, to look beneath the surface where there may be cynicism, rage, transgression, brittleness, and picture pain and suffering that got the person there. Fill in better reasons why others are behaving as they are, and know we're all somewhere desperate, and seeks out that desperation, and seeks out sorrowful gentleness. True love contains kindness, which is mercy, humility, tenderness, grace, because it's not enough to be right or just or fight for things against people only, because even or especially sinners deserve ongoing sympathy. Just because someone is wrong doesn't mean we have any right to cease showing them kindness and love. And then true love contains forgiveness, to know in our own way that what we each are, we must cut some slack. That we each are guilty as anyone else, and given that, we need that slack. Of course we failed, been hasty or less than admirable, but that's no reason to forever withhold love. We learn to forgive when we're no longer self-righteous. In other words, we're brave enough to fathom the darker parts of our own self. And then, of course, true love has loyalty. Even when the crowd no longer agrees, it can be with ourselves too. Staying on the same side with steadfastness, unbudgeable, resilient faith, even if there is a mob jeering. True love contains generosity. Love overflows. It's not just one person. It encompasses someone you just met or strangers. It's for plants, another land, weevils, housebats, a dying moth. It can be anyone, anything, anywhere. Anyone. True love contains patience, wanting others to meet our hopes right now, but true love gives people the time to mature, develop, go wrong in another direction, and not shout at them, but to give them every chance to grow at their own pace toward their better self. And then some notes I took. This is not recent. This is from years back, but I still want to read it. I wrote, I'm learning how to love. I'm just starting to begin to gain the skill. I really only started loving somebody who is named Binyamin. I wrote some men here that I had very strong feelings for. I wrote Naftali, Travis, Sean, Effie, Yankee. These are just crushes. It wasn't real. I wrote with Shalom. It was intense, and maybe we were compatible on the same level in terms of love, but it wasn't true love. He might have never even really loved me. When I love someone, but I feel unloved, that's bad too. In that case, the love should be left for me, kept safe and not drained. In cases where I love after self-love pre-exists, then I won't be left feeling unloved when I love. Because that feeling of love in my heart belongs to me. It's just a feeling. It doesn't need to be another person's, or have anybody even to do with them, or have anything even to do with them. So that was me just starting to touch true love from years ago. So I wish you healing, childhood conditioning about love and these, and then cultivating that true love, which is charity, imagination, kindness, forgiveness, loyalty, generosity, and patience, and first, even for yourself. And thank you for spending this time with me. And be well.